Pew, 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 pew. Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Anime as Spirituality podcast on the Soul No Shonen Substack. I'm the Cozy Sensei, but you can just call me Oloye. On this episode, we are talking about the appeal of miracles. So stick around, stick around. Miracles happen once in a while. When you believe, miracles happen. Okay, I just had to shout out the 23rd anniversary of the Princess Diaries because a classic Anne Hathaway movie. It doesn't matter that it has nothing to do with anime. Right now, I just have to show respect where the millennial girl child was elevated as being somebody to make content for. Spirituality is a fundamental experience and right to the human constitution, and it's foundational in our nature to understand, explore, and discover our world. And if you pay close attention, you'll see that it's the nature of our surrounding world. So it only makes sense that spiritual psychology, as a scientific academic discipline, especially when it's taken seriously, can be used as a ripe, fertile land to explore our interest in spirituality through culture and media. And that's where anime as spirituality comes in. Spiritual psychology is concerned with a science that is beyond the limits of exclusive ontological materialism and mechanism. So we are moving past the hard sciences. We're moving past biology and we're going into the esoteric. We're moving past classical physics and going into quantum physics and quantum mechanics. But that is in no way saying that we're leaving the hard sciences and the physical understanding of our natural world alone or in the past. If anything, we're bringing it along with us through imagination and insight that comes from the spirit, that comes from the unconscious world, a world that we cannot see, but we are deeply impacted by, we experience whether we are aware of it or not, and is worthy of our time, attention, and awareness, period. And that's why it lends so well to the creative medium of anime, because the storytelling in anime goes beyond just the visual arts that we are seeing on screen. Anime storytelling deals with deeper spiritual and physical humane experiences that a lot of people have difficulty without the medium to be able to visualize and conceptualize as a real experience or occurrence that's possible in their daily life. I personally am not one of them. I grew up experiencing spirituality around me and realizing very early on that I am a spirit who has come into this world at this time with a human mission, but with a spiritual calling. So let's start answering that call together, shall we? So I'm starting this podcast talking about miracles because I feel like on a tapped into the collective unconscious level, we have to remind ourselves to be hopeful and to look out for miracles. The fact of the matter is that one does not need an elaborate study to conclude that nearly every human being at some point in life, whether you believe in spirituality, you have a religion or a faith practice that you believe in, has wished or prayed for a miracle. And so what is a miracle? A miracle is an event or an outcome so unlikely that it would seem to be an impossibility to even happen. So whether it be recovery from a terminal illness, a much needed windfall, a romantic connection, or an available parking spot, the appeal of a miracle is universal. Everyone wants the unimaginable, the impossible to occur at least one time in their lives. And if you're anything like me, you want miracles every single day. Like, I actually expect my life to be miraculous. So when reality hits me and it's like, no, bitch, this is the real world, this is real life, I'm like, skirt, what do you mean? I want miracles every single day, every single time. I want to live in this existence that the impossible is actually very real, very possible. But the reason why miracles are so appealing is because real life happens all the time. And a modicum of hope that the pressures of reality, the hard parts of life, can have this glimmer or this momentary breakthrough of something different, something special, really, really moves and captivates a lot of us to continue waking up another day when we're depressed or when we have suicidal ideations that are telling us that the end is much better than trying to live again. And so the appeal of a miracle solves an immediate problem. It's that issue that you're having. Maybe your car broke down and you're just like, I have to get to my destination. I'm about to clock in for work, or I'm about to be late to this appointment, and I need my car to just miraculously start. So a situation in which a real practical material problem is solved on this miraculous existential level is an appealing concept to a lot of us. But it also is appealing because it engenders a direct feeling of connection with something or someone beyond ourselves. So this is where faith comes into play. That imaginative experience where you realize that there is more to this temporal physical world. There's something mystical, there's something metaphysical that is occurring that we cannot see, and yet we are the beneficiaries of that reality in this present moment. That's what makes miracles really shake us, because it reminds us that as human beings, well, I'm a spirit, so I recognize this on multiple levels, but in the human world and realm of existence, a miracle reminds us that we are not alone, and that we don't control everything in our lives. On top of that, it reminds us that whether we define that something beyond ourselves as God or the universe or luck or an infinite, ineffable source, it exists. It kind of reminds me of that Christmas M&M commercial where the M&Ms and Santa Claus meet up and they realize, oh shoot, he does exist. They do exist. That's how miracles shake us into the supernatural, into the mystical and the metaphysical. So let's back up and talk about the quote-unquote normal course. In psychoanalysis, the patient and the therapist seek to transform what would ordinarily be the normal course of nature. The normal course is the universal human tendency to engage repeatedly in life from the same set of perspectives shaped by a complex tangle of nature, nurture, and culture, which often leads to various forms of suffering and lack of fulfillment. For example, it truly seems like a miracle when a person who has experienced extreme childhood trauma can emerge from a pattern of chronic self-destructive behavior to lead a constructive, enjoyable life. Or when a quote-unquote untreatable schizophrenic, through a healing relationship with a therapist, can enjoy a productive, satisfying life, sometimes without even taking medication. But even on a less dramatic scale, small changes in our habitual perspectives can have a profound effect on our capacity to experience joy and fulfillment in life. A great example of a miracle in anime is whenever your favorite character is gravely injured or dies and then they come back to life. Or, for instance, one of the most recent examples of a miracle that really moved me was the end of Demon Slayer Season 3, when everyone in the Demon Slayer universe, especially Tanjiro, and we, the audience, realize that Nezuko the demon, who because of being a demon cannot be touched by the sun, has conquered the sun. So we understand the appeal of a miracle, but when we're talking about the experience of a miracle, what makes something miraculous? Well, firstly, a miracle, or at least experiencing a miracle, immediately lifts the self. It lifts you out of a space of isolation, out of the predictability of the mundane, and into an awareness of a larger transcendent scope of reality within which all things are possible. So when we experience a miracle, what we are experiencing is the connection to the collective unconscious. It is a way of reminding you that you are not alone, that you actually are connected to more than just your experience, more than just your personal life. And that direct experience of the astonishing magnitude of reality has the potential to transform our experience of being in the world and being in ourselves. So it gives you this opportunity to realize just how powerful you are, just how much you deserve the extraordinary in your life to happen. And it reminds you that you are not the only person who desires this. And so you are not the only person who should be left out of experiencing it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, miracles give you the opportunity to wake up to this existence that you are worthy of a spiritual and a divine experience of life. And you don't have to accept the mundane doldrums of the routine of getting up, going to work, crossing off your checklist, the things that living in a capitalistic society tells you your body, your mind, your time are only to be used and exploited for labor to the elite class. What miracles remind us is that there is more to life than this. So you're probably like, okay, Cozy Sensei, but what characterizes a miracle? How do I know when I am experiencing a miracle in my life? I'm going to just let you know that miracles can be whatever you allow them to be. If you do find that parking space in Target and you're like, oh, thank you, Lord, I found it. That can be just as miraculous as somebody who is spontaneously and inexplicably cured of a terminal disease or a tumor that, they were just like, this is going to be with you forever. Or an illness that the doctors have told you is going to be with you for the rest of your life, and you can just bear with it, manage and cope. And then boom, you realize somehow, some way, it's no longer a burden in your life. It's no longer something that is holding you back. So what characterizes miracles in some remarkable sense of contrary to the normal course of nature is twofold. Number one, it's the casual form of a miracle, anything that is highly unlikely, but is a beneficial event. So, highly unlikely that a person is spontaneously cured from cancer without undergoing any type of chemotherapy, radioactive therapy, treatment in general, and yet boom, their cancer is gone and they're in remission. And I think that is a beautiful thing. Glory be to God. And then there is the biblical form of a miracle. We have a lot of miracles in biblical texts. For instance, Jesus walking on water, turning water into wine being his first miracle ever. He said, let's turn it up. We're at a wedding. Let's have a party. Let's take a little sidebar detour. And the funny thing about Jesus' first miracle of turning water into wine was not even a miracle that he wanted to do. His mom was like, I know you. I know about you. I know that you have supernatural powers. And we're at a family friend's function and we don't want them to look embarrassed. So can you, do what you do at home in public so that we can just continue a good time? And the fact that the Bible, and really specifically the gospel writer of John, highlighted in John 2 a party as the first miracle that Jesus does in public is something that I really want to hone in on about miracles and really about the nature of Jesus. Life is to be enjoyed. Life has so many issues that come at us without even the recognition of the power of living for something more, that I feel like Jesus was just saying, even though he told his mom straight up, like, woman, what you doing? Now is not the time. I'm shy. I'm an introvert. I don't want the attention. He still recognized that if there is no other place to experience a miracle, no other place for someone to enjoy their life, it has to be at a place of celebration. It has to be with people that you know and you love, who are reminding you that life actually has things worth celebrating for. And yes, it was a wedding and it was a marriage, but it could be for anything: a graduation, a new job, your birthday, if nothing else. But let's go back into other biblical forms of miracles. So we have the parting of the Red Sea, the burning of the bush when God appeared to Moses, the Immaculate Conception of Jesus Christ. And even though I am using biblical forms of miracles, whatever your spiritual practice, whatever your religious beliefs are, think about what are the forms and the signs of miracles in those traditions that remind you there is more to life and more to hope for in this life than just the ordinary and the mundane. Okay, so we've talked about the appeal of a miracle, the experience of a miracle, and the characteristics of miracles. We've also gone into why a miracle exists by understanding what in psychoanalysis is called the normal course of reality. And it's important that we juxtapose miracles to normality, because one cannot exist without the other. Good cannot exist without bad. Opposites are necessary, because one thing cannot exist in the context of what it actually is without its opposing force that makes it necessary to exist in the first place. Therefore, to illuminate the kind of space in which the miracle of psychological transformation is most likely to take place, okay? We have to focus on areas of convergence of psychoanalysis, spiritual space, and psi phenomena. Each of these three seemingly disparate realms are actually interwoven and interconnected, because they each facilitate experiences outside the generally expected or normal course of events. Like the proverbial blindfolded people trying to describe an elephant from different parts and different areas on the elephant, each of these three seemingly disparate realms reveals a different aspect of the way that the self participates in the reality of the unseen, in a miracle. And so what we have is the process of psychological change and growth. And this is reliant on permeable boundaries between self and others. This is removing the isolation that being in the mundane contains us in, or makes us believe is the only true state of existence and reality. This psychological change and growth is also on modes of relating that are beyond logic, beyond the logical explicit description of existence. And so when we're talking about a miracle, we are really not even talking about what is logical. If it was logical, it wouldn't be miraculous, because it would be expected, because it would be the normal course and the mundane thing that doesn't even allow us the opportunity to be surprised. A miracle catches us by surprise. A miracle blows our expectations out of the water and makes reality have to reform and reshape itself to the miraculous thing. These same features characterize spiritual experience and psi phenomena when they are connected through this process of psychological change and growth within us and within the collective unconscious. So this can look like telepathy, or the communication between minds, clairvoyance, or the communication from environment to the mind. Even psychokinesis, the capacity to move objects or influence a physical system without any discernible physical means of doing so. So in layman's terms, clairvoyance is when a bitch be seeing shit. Clairaudience, or the communication of the auditory senses around us to the mind, is when a bitch be hearing shit. Clairsentience, or the experience of communication of external feelings with the mind when knowledge is immediately felt, is when a bitch just be feeling shit and be right. That's that gut feeling. And then claircognizance is that communication of knowledge that is external to you. You don't even realize where you got that knowledge, but you know that you know. So that's intuition. And that's just when a bitch be knowing shit. So what we have here are experiences of the miraculous that come through the individual and are connected to the collective. So the reason why I'm starting this podcast that makes the parallels and the intersection between anime and spirituality is because through my autistic burnout, I have been in multiple states of wondering, what is life for? Why am I struggling? Why am I suffering? When will all this end? And can't I just give up? But then in this executive dysfunction spiral, I've been vegging out on my couch for years, consuming a lot of anime. And I just want you all to know that anime has been in my life since the early 90s with Dragon Ball Z and Sailor Moon and Pokemon. And so shout out and rest in perfect peace to Akira Toriyama for being the icon, the legend, the trailblazer of shonen anime. But as I have grown through life, as I have experienced the hardships of being an unrealized and undiagnosed and late realized neurodivergent person, I have struggled with feeling seen and understood in my personal life, in my professional life. But I feel a recognition of self in anime, specifically in shonen anime. And even though, of course, I'm not the target demographic of shonen, which is teenage boys, I resonate with the fighting spirit that is present in almost every shonen main character / protagonist, and the role that they serve in their worlds, in their universes. So when I conceptualized anime as experience and anime as a spiritual experience, I was pulling from Friedrich Schiller's aesthetic education and art as experience. And I encourage you to go look into Friedrich Schiller's work as a philosopher. He's dead, but he was a philosopher during the French Revolution, and he was just like completely gobsmacked by the ways in which the revolutionary army of that time was handling the bourgeoisie class by killing them on the guillotine. And he kept asking, like, what makes a moral person? He said man, but as a non-binary person, we're going to be inclusive of all human existences and ask the question of what makes a moral and just society and individual. And the thing that Friedrich Schiller concluded was that in order for there to be a moral and just individual and therein a moral and just society, we have to pay attention to art, and we have to pay attention to the ways in which art calls us to a higher sense of existence and a higher regard of self and others in myriad ways. And by doing that, we have to teach it. We have to form an education of the ways in which we create moral and just people and a moral and just society. And so then that's where the impetus of aesthetic education was birthed. And I have now gleaned from that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to create that same parallel of experiences within anime. So anime as experience is genuinely me asking and exploring and analyzing, how do we use these anime storylines, arcs, storytelling in general, as means of empowering ourselves to be willing to live, willing to stay in the fight for our lives, willing to expect more of ourselves and others in a moral and just way that creates an expansive understanding of humanity and of life and of society, among other things. But really, all in all, I conceptualized this entire concept by wanting to live, by wanting to overcome my autistic burnout and my ADHD executive dysfunctions, and really just focus on what will it take of me, what is required of me to stay in this world and to become better in it, and not to be the victim of my own oppression, of subjugation, because that's going to exist regardless, but I don't have to accept it lying down. I have a say in my life. I have a say in my future, and anime shows me that so much, and no other anime does that better than One Piece, at least for me. So now that we have all of the psychoanalysis and the psychological and the educational parts of Miracles out of the way, I had to do all those explanatory commas because I get to the fun stuff, which is talking about how all of this relates to anime. And so even though we can look and analyze many anime characters and storylines to talk about Miracles, I want to talk about my favorite miracle worker, Monkey D. Luffy, the Pirate King, aka Straw Hat Luffy. So this podcast is a One Piece stan account. I will not accept any slander, any disparaging thoughts or comments about Eiichiro Oda Sensei's masterwork, magnum opus, okay? The main reason why I will not accept it is because Luffy has my heart. Luffy is the Christ, and Luffy is the authentic master in the Hegelian master-slave dialectic, which is a philosophical theory conceptualized by George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel. So the master-slave dialectic tells of a story of a confrontation between two self-conscious individuals, that is the master and the slave. And I will dedicate another podcast episode to breaking down this concept, but I really want to focus on the greatness of Monkey D. Luffy as the authentic master, as the person who makes miracles happen, not because of anything other than the desire to be free. If you have spent any amount of time watching the 1100 episodes of One Piece, whether it's one episode or you are caught up, I am currently in the late 800s, about to crack into the 900th episode, and I can't even believe it, but I'm so happy to be here, so grateful to be alive, to see the to be continued at the end of every episode. You will know that Monkey D. Luffy is the type of character that you can only get as he's liberating, as he's fighting, as he's defending other people in his goal and quest to become the Pirate King. Luffy is doing things that remind people that miracles are possible, that miracles do happen, and that suffering does not last always. He does this by a fierce and ardent and really a foolish self-belief. If there is nobody else in the world, whether in fiction or in reality, that believes in themselves, that means that Monkey D. Luffy does not exist. And I'm grateful to live in the same timeline of existence as this character, because the miracles that Luffy has worked in every single arc, but specifically I'm thinking of what he did at Marineford, even though the worst case scenario still happened. I'm thinking of Water 7 arc, Impelled Down, Annie's Lobby, and Dressrosa. You know that because he is the protagonist, because he is the hero of this story, he's going to win in the end. But what I love about One Piece's storytelling and pacing is that we don't see easy wins all the time. If anything, especially during the long arcs of the series, we see Luffy fail and falter and lose time and time again. He gets punched the fuck out very often. And even though he takes his beatings and his bruisings, he never backs down. The thing that really clicked this into my brain and started my journey of creating and conceptualizing anime as experience was his fight against Moria during the Thriller Bark arc. And Luffy ate the gum gum devil fruit. And in the One Piece universe, devil fruits give human beings this miraculous power to embody a specific trait, and that is their power. And he ate the gum gum fruit, which turned him into a rubber man. And within that, he had to train himself to control his power, because you can have power and it can be uncontrolled and it can be dangerous to yourself and to others. But what we see in the Thriller Bark arc is that because of the fact that Luffy is a rubber man, he says something when Moria, the villain, the big bad of that arc, when Moria is talking about like, why won't you just give up? I'm like, I'm beating your ass. Like, I'm not showing you mercy. Just lose already. Be defeated. And Luffy says, yeah, like, you can keep beating me down, but I'm not going to back down. I'm not going to stay down. I'm always going to bounce back. And that was a double entendre. Ask me how. He's the rubber man. So we already know that rubber is elastic, rubber is malleable and buoyant, and we see how many ways in which Luffy has applied the principles of rubber and elasticity in his fights. We saw that very well during the Skypiea arc when he is battling God, Eneru, and Eneru's power is lightning. And if you know anything about science, you know that rubber is an insulator. And so it doesn't conduct electricity. So when Eneru is throwing lightning bolts at Luffy, he is impervious to it. He is immune to strikes because there are few or no free electrons in rubber to conduct and to move electricity and therein lightning through him. So while Eneru was offing niggas with lightning bolts, Luffy was still triumphant because he could not be put down in that way. So we go further into the next real main arc, which is the Thriller Bark arc. Say that 1,000 times. And Luffy is battling Moria, and Moria is pounding him down to the ground. And if you know anything about Luffy's indomitable spirit, he refuses to stay down. Moria calls him like a pesky roach that refuses to be killed. And Luffy is like, yeah, bro, you're not going to do that. You might beat me down, but I'm not going to stay down. I'm always going to bounce back because rubber is resilient. And Luffy teaches us the power of resilience. One Piece shows us that shit's going to happen. If it's not one thing, it's another. This life is not easy. It's not built to be easy. But when you have a dream, when you have a reason to live, when you have a desire to be alive, no matter what comes your way, if you allow yourself to remember that you are resilient, you are made of rubber, you can always bounce back. Nothing, no weapon that's formed against you can prosper. Nothing that tries to pin you down will actually be successful because you refuse it. And when you fight for your life, miracles happen. And I gush over Luffy as a miracle worker because he does not work miracles at a time where people expect him to. And that is the point of miracles, that you're not even expecting it to happen. But then boom, next thing you know, Doflamingo has been defeated in Dressrosa after enslaving an entire kingdom for 10 years, for a whole decade. These people in Dressrosa did not believe that they could ever, well, the ones who knew that they were being oppressed, the toys specifically, they did not know when or if their liberation would ever come. They just knew that they were suffering. And the people above ground that were living as a happy-go-lucky, multicultural, multi-humanoid existence who had no clue of the evil that was happening in the bowels of their civilization, they thought that the reign of Doflamingo would be forever because things were great. But then here comes Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates, who shake up this world, who shake up the mundane, who shake up the suffering of people and say, hey, liberation is possible. And in a day, they liberate the people of Dressrosa. Although the arc takes like 90 episodes and a good 20 of those episodes are just Luffy fighting Doflamingo, what we see is that Luffy's relentless spirit, Luffy's resilience in a fight works miracles because it forces people to see that they too can believe in the miraculous happening. When he is fighting at the beginning of the arc in the Colosseum's battle for death over winning Ace's devil fruit, the flame fruit, what draws people to Luffy when he is disguised as Lucy is the fact that he is charismatic, yes, he is charming, yes, but he does things that you never expect. And an audience that did not even anticipate him in the fight, that definitely didn't want him to win, starts to cheer and root for him without even realizing that they're cheering and rooting for their future savior. And the way that Luffy inspires Rebecca, who is also a gladiator, but who is a despised gladiator, a gladiator who has also never hurt anybody, has never killed anybody. But because of the family line that she comes from, people hate her. And so Rebecca fights in isolation. She fights without anybody who believes in her to win, who wants her to win. But then Luffy, aka Lucy, shows up and Luffy likes her. Luffy hears her story. Luffy understands her background and just realizes, you know what? You're a real ass person to believe in. And so I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to fight on your behalf. And as he's fighting, because he wants Ace's devil fruit, his boldness inspires Rebecca to also be bold, to even be bolder than she is, because she's a badass gladiator. And I love the fact that when you see somebody working a miracle, when you see Luffy working a miracle, he does it without ever making a big deal about it. Because for him, his miracles come when he is trying to defeat evil, when he is trying to overthrow slavery and dictatorships and wickedness. And because he is miraculous in the face and in the opposition of evil, there's this life and death battle that is always happening. And Luffy isn't setting out to kill his opponent, but what he is setting out to do is, listen, I will beat you by hook and by crook. And the way that I will do that is by risking my own life. And he knows that because he is risking his life, he will win. Because he is risking his life, a miracle will happen. And I'm not telling anybody to risk your life. Like, this is not me saying put it all on the line. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I am trying to say is that when you recognize that you have nothing to lose and everything to gain from just believing in yourself, believing in the unimaginable to happen, you open the door for miracles. And a lot of times in One Piece, miracles happen to Luffy because he selflessly put himself at risk of being killed, of being harmed for other people. So he collects friends simply because he is a friend to the friendless. He is a friend to people who have been abandoned, who have been ostracized, who have been isolated from society. And those people, even when he turns his enemies into his allies, those people seem to come in the 11th hour. Luffy shows up on time, and he may get his ass beat until 11:59, but at the stroke of midnight, he's winning. At the stroke of midnight, someone is coming in his defense. I just finished the Whole Cake Island arc, and wow, what an incredible arc that I might have to just do its own entire episode analyzing. But if Sanji wasn't where he was when Luffy needed him the most, would he have made it? If Jinbei didn't show up for Luffy when Jinbei showed up, how would he have moved past his grief? If Ivankov, Emporia, my queen, didn't show up for Luffy and save him from poisoning when he was in Impel Down, what would we even be able to say of the story? The story would have ended. And so miracles keep us going. They keep us fighting for our lives. And if that is not the most miraculous part of being human, of being alive, I don't know what is. And the reason for that is because death is inevitable. We know that. And I love that One Piece doesn't shy away from the death of heroes and villains, the morally gray and the purely innocent. But what it also does is it shows us that there is life after death, or when you think all is lost. Don't give up just yet, because that character you thought was gone, whether you wanted them to be or not, has reemerged. So it's saying that you're tougher, you're more resilient, you're made of rubber if you allow yourself to remember that, and to remember that the miracle of life is just believing that you deserve to be alive. Since you're listening to a spirituality podcast, it should come as no surprise that I am knowledgeable about tarot and oracle cards. I have a Leo 9th house stellium, so for anybody who is familiar with astrology, you know, the occult and spirituality, they go hand in hand. And being autistic and having ADHD means that I have all these special interests that I get to funnel into my work, namely tarot and oracle cards. So what I decided was that I'm going to bring everyone else into this world with me. Okay, no, like, for anybody who has been very wary of tarot and oracle cards, I promise you that that laugh was just, it was in jest, okay? So don't take it seriously. There's nothing evil. There's nothing wicked about these cardboard drawings that are actually rooted in Christian theology, mythology, and lore. So let's be cool. It's chill, be okay, and let's have some fun while learning about tarot and what the cards have in store and can reveal about us in our lives. So since tarot is actually a narrative in all 78 cards of the hero's journey, I think I'm just going to go in order of the major arcana from card 0, which is the Fool, and then into the 4 suits of the minor arcana each episode, so that you can get this full picture of the journey of life and self-discovery that tarot is trying to open our eyes and allow us to explore through these cards. And then with the oracle cards, it's just my way of giving you an opportunity to see yourself and to resonate with a spiritual concept that is geared towards your encouragement, geared towards your hope of sticking through the tough stuff. Because if you're going to struggle anyway through life, you might as well glean something meaningful from it. So let's start from ground zero with card zero, the Fool. Now, the Fool is typically depicted by a young person, usually a young boy, that is joyfully walking into the world for the very first time. The child is setting out on a journey and taking their first steps with joy and excitement. They are carrying nothing but a small sack on a stick, very Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer energy. And they are absolutely excited to begin a new life. The thing is, though, that because they are new to this, they are green to the adventure that awaits them, they don't even care about the possible dangers that lie ahead of them. And the funny thing is, if you look at the card, you can see the very first impending danger that is usually depicted as like a cliff or a very tight, narrow path that is going to obstruct their way. Behind the Fool is usually a dog barking at the nips of the Fool's heels. And the dog is representing and symbolizing a warning to this child. And we don't really know if the Fool is naive or simply oblivious to the dangers and the obstacles that await them. But the warning comes because the Fool is not aware of their surroundings, but will soon learn how important and necessary it is. Because if not, the Fool will never see all the adventures that they are dreaming of encountering. And since I have spent a lot of this episode fanning and standing over the ultimate Fool, Luffy, it feels right to talk about the Fool and the Fool card in tarot, because the whole point of One Piece is Luffy setting out on an adventure of a lifetime, and Luffy is extremely childlike in his joy and his quest for adventure and his carelessness about the dangers that he will encounter on his path through the Grand Line and towards obtaining the One Piece. And the Fool card is represented by the number 0. In numerology, 0 represents infinite potential. So this blank slate, this new clear path of possibilities that are infinite, shows us that the Fool has yet to develop an actual personality, that their journey is what's going to shape their personality, because through their trials, through their interactions and their obstacles, they learn who they are. And like Luffy, when we see the Fool card show up in tarot, what we are seeing is the beginning of a new journey. What we are feeling energetically is optimism and freedom from the chains and constraints of the routine of ordinary life, which is the miraculous. So when the Fool card is upright, we are talking about, like I said, beginnings and freedom, innocence, originality. We're talking about adventure, spontaneity, idealism, this zest for life, this green experience that says that anything is possible and that really nothing bad matters, because we're just in it for the plot, for the experience, and for the fun of being alive. And that's where the miracle of a new journey actually is incited within us. It's the hope of anything can happen, and that includes miracles. So in order to experience the miracle, we have to come along, climb aboard, and set out on a new journey and adventure. But in tarot, a card can also come out in reverse or upside down. And so when we see the Fool card in reverse, what we're seeing is a reckless ambition. We're seeing carelessness, someone who is gullible and naive. It can also represent a selfishness of a foolish, distracted young person, like those negative connotations that youthfulness and not really experiencing the hardships and the facts of life. That's what the Fool card in reverse can symbolize in a tarot pull.
Therapy's a lovely start, but I suggest ayahuasca. Strip the ego from the bottom.
So today is August 4th, and it is the Leo new moon, and I am a Leo sun, and a Leo moon, who was born during a Leo new moon. So it's only right to start my spirituality podcast on my new moon return to talk about rebirth during the oracle segment, because a new moon is all about starting anew. It's all about new journeys. It's the Fool card in the moon cycle. And I hope you like listening to Meet the Grams by Kendrick Lamar, because I wanted to bring up ayahuasca. Ayahuasca represents rebirth. And ayahuasca connects to telepathy. So I'm bringing all these concepts that I've talked about this entire episode in and weaving them into each other, because I think it's important that you see and understand, rather, that spirituality is about the interconnectedness of all things. It's everything and all things happening all at once. And so there is no compartmentalization of the spirit. Instead, we have to start paying attention to the ways in which the spirit connects us to the world and us to ourselves. And that's what ayahuasca does. Ayahuasca is about rebirth and mastery and great revelation and a discovery of your higher self. Ayahuasca is about meeting with the creator, with the creatrix, about that intimate connection with the divine, with the spirit, with the unknown, and doing that with the awareness that you are a divine messenger. And there are gifts from the spirit that are desirous of being placed in your hands and in your possession for you to wield. Remember how I talked about Luffy having to learn how to control the gum fruit, because power that is uncontrolled is dangerous and destructive? Ayahuasca is talking exactly about that when it comes to the gifts of the spirit. So these realizations and this expectation or this experience of transcendence is super important with this herb. And in this oracle pull that I got from the Adriana Ayala's herbal astrology oracle deck, I connected with the fact that whenever we don't believe in what we cannot see, whenever we lose our faith, our sense of identity, or are resistant to change, we stunt our journey forward. We lose the childlike sense of joy and wonder, and even the hope and opportunity of freedom that comes with starting a new journey, that comes with a new moon, that comes with setting intentions of what you want to experience and the life you want to live and the miracles you want to see in your daily life. You stunt them because you lack the sense of belief that you can see them. You lack the resilience of being able to die and know that death on the other side is rebirth. And so ayahuasca calls us to removing ourselves from being stuck in old patterns of belief and being unable to see beyond our experiences. Remember that the normal course of life is to remain in the routine, is to remain in an isolated sense of your own experience. But the spirit calls you to move beyond that, to transcend and to shatter the ideals and the desires of what you thought was good enough. We're not settling for good enough. We are actually soaring and expecting and seeking out the greater, what is best. So if you're settling, ayahuasca is telling you, you must lift out of that complacency, and you must recognize that you are called for greater. Why? How do I know that? Because the astrological planetary rulers of ayahuasca are Pluto, which is about power, Jupiter, which is about abundance, and Neptune, which is about the unconscious and being lost when you are disconnected from it all. So that brings us to the end of our very first episode of the Anime as Spirituality podcast. I feel like it's an auspicious date and time in our lives to remember that miracles can happen. If anything, in the United States, at least, we saw that, listen, no one wants that orange potato to be reelected as president of Usonia. However, we saw something miraculous happen in mid-July when Joe Biden dropped out of the race, and we got a candidate that actually galvanized people to reimagine hope and to fight for democracy. And this is not even with me saying that I like either candidate, but I do believe that we have entered a different timeline and trajectory that was founded upon the miraculous happening at an unforeseen and unexpected time. Nobody thought that Joe Biden would drop out of the race, even though everyone wanted him to, but because it was so late in this election cycle, people didn't think it would happen, but look what happened. And then the miraculous happened for the Kamala Harris campaign, because boom, here she is raising over $8 million, over $50 million in 24 hours and 48 hours. Here we are seeing white women actually doing the miraculous thing of waking the fuck up and realizing that it does not serve them, let alone anybody in this world, to vote against their own best interests like they did in 2016. But apart from that, we see miracles happen every single day. We see miracles happening in the resilience of the Palestinian people in the fight for their lives against genocide from Isn't Real. And we see miracles happening when we recognize that the people in our lives who have given up on us are just showing us that we have the opportunity to prove to them that we ain't going nowhere, and they have seen nothing yet. So I hope that you can join me with every single episode in believing in yourself, believing in your spirit, and recognizing that the media that you consume should not just be a form of escape, but should be a form of experience towards your liberation, towards your growth, towards your change. And through that, you recognize the God in you. That's the only thing I want. I really don't give a fuck about what set you claim religiously, spiritually, as long as you recognize that the morality of society and of self is what is going to heal our world and make it a better place for future generations and even for the now. If you're interested in finding out more about how I connect and analyze spirituality with anime and with shonen, you can follow and subscribe to my shonen spirituality Substack, which is Soul No Shonen, SOLNOSHONEN at substack.com. You can also follow my TikTok, which is the Soul Gospel on TikTok. That's SOL, not SOUL. So it's the Soul Gospel, TheSoulGospel. And I go into the ways in which spirituality interact with neurodivergence and anime and aesthetic education. I'm also trying to build up my Twitch, so you can follow me at The Cozy Sensei on twitch.tv. Please do that because I would love to stream all of my cozy games and talk about anime and talk about spirituality and books and just continue community building in any way possible. If you want to see what I do on a professional level, you can visit thesoulgospel.com. It's spelled just like my TikTok, TheSoulGospel.com. And that is my website for spiritual and therapeutic guidance to ADHD and neurodivergent people of color. I hope that the next episode meets you well, and in the meantime, you take care of yourself. Until next time, this is the Anime as Spirituality podcast. Bye-bye.